Hello, my name is Dean Ramsden, and I am a therapeutic energy healer. In this episode, I want to talk about a fascinating 20th century spiritual teacher named Neville Goddard. In the field of New Thought, he is known for his teachings on manifestation and imagination, and particularly for his central principle, the law of assumption. So what is the law of assumption? Essentially, it states that your assumptions about yourself and the world help create your reality, and believing a desired outcome already exists, even though it's radically different from the one that you have experienced, you can bring it into manifestation. This is different from the more widely known law of attraction, which is focused on positive thinking and vibrational alignment. Goddard's law of assumption is rooted in your inner state of being, asserting that your imagination is the ultimate creative force. His core message is that if you visualize yourself as already having achieved your goals, you can make those dreams become a reality. This creative process is governed by what he famously called feeling is the secret. He emphasized that thoughts alone aren't enough. You must embody the emotions of your wish fulfilled. To do this, you need to engage all your senses so as to make any mental rehearsal as real to you as possible. Goddard's teachings also included practical techniques such as the state akin to sleep, SATS, and a process he called revision. Revision is a mental practice where you rewrite past events to remove their limiting beliefs. This is a powerful psychological act designed to change over time your perception of reality and create new future possibilities. Now, you won't find direct clinical or academic references to Neville Goddard's work in clinical psychology. This is because his work was considered spiritual and metaphysical and fundamentally different from the methods used in empirical science. His influence is mostly found in self-help literature through personal coaching and the metaphysical frameworks often found in the so-called New Age. However, absence of direct references doesn't mean his work is without merit. I believe Goddard's law of assumption is a spiritual articulation of the well-documented cognitive behavioral feedback loop, as well as other science-backed tools currently used in psychology. The most direct parallel is the concept of the self-fulfilling prophecy, a term coined by sociologist Robert K. Merton. This concept states that a belief or expectation, whether correct or incorrect, can bring about the desired outcome. A classic example also is the Pygmalion effect, demonstrated in an experiment by Robert Rosenthal and Lenore Jacobson. In this, teachers were told that a random selection of their students were expected to perform exceptionally well. As a result, those students showed a significant increase in test scores in comparison to the control group. The teachers' expectations and behavior led them to provide more specific feedback and approval, which confirmed their initial belief. This directly parallels Goddard's instructions to act as if your desired reality is already here. The psychological mechanisms behind the self-fulfilling prophecy and Goddard's law are largely explained by the psychology concept of schemas and confirmation bias. Schemas are mental frameworks that organize your knowledge, acting as an internal guide that influences your perception, memory, and behavior. Schemas function as a mental filter, determining what information you pay attention to, what you interpret, and what you remember. This is closely linked to confirmation bias, where the tendency is to selectively gather and interpret information that supports your existing beliefs while disregarding evidence that contradicts them. It becomes self-perpetuating and hard to change, because new information that doesn't align with the existing framework is often misinterpreted or ignored. This is a precise psychological explanation for why a person's assumptions seem to harden into fact in their external reality. At a deep biological level, neuroscience research on confirmation bias supports Goddard's ideas. Studies have found that the brain precisely encodes belief inconsistent information, but then gives it less weight when making a final decision. This provides a neurological basis for why your self-generated assumptions are so powerful in shaping your perception and decision-making. This creates a self-reinforcing loop. A self-generated belief triggers a selective readout process which leads to biased perception And that biased perception then fuels behavior that reinforces the belief. A perfect, self-fulfilling prophecy. Goddard's work can also be seen as an intentional and functional application of psychological projection. Freud first introduced projection as a defense where you unconsciously attribute your own unacceptable feelings to others, so as to avoid confronting them internally. A common example is a man who is attracted to a female co-worker, but accuses her of flirting with him to avoid admitting his own feelings. In contrast, Carl Jung viewed projection as a critical pathway to self-awareness, where others become a mirror for the self. According to Jung, the most important work a person can do is to withdraw the projection of their own shadow onto others, leading to a more integrated and authentic self. Goddard's work can be viewed as an intentional and purposeful application of these psychological principles. The practices Neville Goddard advocated for bear striking similarities to techniques now used in evidence-based therapies. For instance, his instruction to visualize yourself as the person you want to be and to feel the emotions of that reality are closely aligned with the clinical use of guided imagery. This technique is used to reduce anxiety, manage stress, and provoke positive cognitive changes. In a similar way, Goddard's use of positive affirmations to reinforce new beliefs is a core component of cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT. A key tenet of CBT, called cognitive restructuring, involves identifying and challenging negative self-limiting beliefs and replacing them with more adaptive thoughts. This process is similar to Goddard's technique of challenging negative assumptions and actively working to transform them. His act-as-if principle also resonates with behavioral activation, a treatment component that helps clients engage in positive behaviors to improve their mood, even before they feel like it. While you won't find direct references to Goddard's work in clinical psychology research, the appeal and effectiveness of his teachings for personal development are rooted in core psychological mechanisms that are now well established and empirically supported. His teachings on the law of assumption, on the use of the imagination, can be seen as an intentional and purposeful application of psychological principles. The law of assumption is a spiritualized, self-fulfilling prophecy. The power of imagination harnesses the same processes as guided imagery, and the idea that the world is a projection of inner consciousness can be understood as a deliberate use of psychological process. Neville Goddard's work isn't for everyone. He liberally references the Bible in his writings, and his publications can be repetitive, a common writing style of his era. But if his approach appeals to you, I hope you can see that it's psychologically validated in today's psychology domains. You can explore his ideas, put them into practice, and hopefully gain positive shifts in your life. And not to mention, you can use his revision technique to remove the negative influence of the past. To study Neville Goddard, there are many audio recordings of his lectures on YouTube, either taken from live events or ones that use an AI-generated voice to read fragments from his books. For my fellow energy workers working in a therapeutic context, understanding Neville Goddard's ideas and comparing them to clinical psychology adds another set of resources to your healing work with clients. After you have isolated negative experiences or critical self-talk in your client's personal process, you can guide them towards using Neville Goddard's ideas in a way that is coherent to your own healing practice and goals. I hope you've enjoyed this introduction to Neville Goddard's work, and bye for now.